Paul, thanks for jumping on the podcast. So just quickly, what's your background and your journey to your current role?
So I actually started working at the Golden State Warriors when I was in college, undergraduate school. I got an internship there, and the way I got it, I think, is probably the most interesting part of the story. I actually called in their main line and said, I want to work for free. Who should I talk to? And they literally just transferred me to, at the time, the director of ticket sales. And he just told me to send my resume, and I made sure I was persistent in that process. I went through everything I learned in school at college for how to follow up, and eventually he brought me in for the interview. And he only asked me two questions to get the internship. He just said to me, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be here." And then he said, "Are you expecting to get paid?" And I was, "Well, no. When I called you, I said I want to work for free." So then he just said, all right, I guess I got nothing to lose. So then I was there for 6 months, and he told me a month and a half in that I got a full-time job when I graduated from college. I just made sure in that 6 months I busted my tail to do everything I could make them successful, but also show that I provide value.
So so I think one of the when you're talking to young reps and you look at young reps, because even if they are getting hired in full time, what are some of those things that you could tell a young rep to do when they first get to a team that even if they're not selling right away, what are ways that they can contribute to an organization? Because I think a lot of times they put so much pressure on the sales end that they almost end up becoming insular, and it makes it easier to let go of them, because if they're not selling and they're not connecting with the people around them, or they're over connecting, they're trying to do too much with the people around them, it makes it easier to get away. So what can a young rep do to really show that they're in it for the organization?
It comes down to effort. Show that you have, the guts to work hard in challenging and in tough situations. And then, as a person looking at young staff members in the sports industry, I just try to see if they care.
Yeah.
And you really can tell if they care based on their effort. Like if they're trying really hard, they're visually upset when they're not being successful at selling. You know that you got a winner there. Regardless of whether they're successful in that moment. In sales, you know when you can sell and when you can't. And I think that's easier to pinpoint than seeing when someone's trying and putting all their effort, all their care into it. And I think there's definitely a balance to it as you get later in your career. But when you're in sales and you're just starting, the manager just wants to believe that you care and see the effort into the sales process.
And it's helping them, then it becomes our responsibility. But for a young rep too, don't get frustrated by it and throw your coffee cup down. Like, look for the answer, find the solution, find the way around it. If you don't know the answer to it, which you shouldn't a lot of times, that's when you need to go out, talk to people, have those conversations with people around the office.
Completely agree.
So who are some of those people in your career as you were growing up that you were like, man, that person, they've got it together, that's who I want to be like when I become big?
That's a great question. Well, so our chief revenue officer now, Brandon Schneider, when I was an intern, he was actually an account executive. And he is one of the most passionate employees I've ever been around. Works harder than anyone in the room. And so this day, from 2002 when he started with the team, I think it was 2002 or 2003, to today, 2018. He still has grit to work harder than everybody else in the room. And, to be able to keep up with his level of efforts is a really difficult thing to do. But I think that's what's got him to the position he's in. Not only that, he's one of the smartest people I've seen in this industry. He's very intelligent. I've learned almost everything from a sales perspective from him and a few others. But I feel really grateful to be able to be in a position to work for someone like him. He's just so talented.
And so sometimes it's a misconception, right, with the young rep that working hard means that you've got to get in at 7 o'clock and you've got to leave at 7 o'clock. And then on game nights, you've got to be the one dusting the floor afterwards. But, a lot of time what we miss during that process is the best people I've ever worked with, they maximize 9 to 5. Like, when they get into the office, it could be 9 o'clock, it could be 7 o'clock. Whenever they're there, they maximize the time there, right?
I agree with that completely. I think as you get older, and people got to realize that you work to live. more so than live to work. But to a certain extent, if you love your job and it's a part of living, you just start seeing people, they work all the time because they enjoy it. But I agree with you, like, it's probably not commonplace for everybody to get into that habit. But yeah, Brandon's definitely one of those guys that works late.
Yeah. No, and then, one of the things I used to tell in my sales training is successful executives either come in early or they stay late. I mean, they don't tend to be 9 to 5 guys, or gals, but you can certainly get the job done between 9 and 5, especially as a salesperson, as long as you're dedicated to that time during that day. So you've been hailed as a top social seller, and I think one of the cool things is you can see how a lot of people have done that in the ticket sales area, but you've done such a good job of that in the premium sales area, and that's something that young reps are told that they need to do, and then aren't given the instruction manual about how to do it because no one's really written the instruction manual. So, what does social selling actually mean to you when you think about it? And what's your favorite success story from social selling? Being of time of the essence here.
Yeah, I'll be quick on my favorite story, but really, it's just another communication tool. It's you look at all the different ways that people communicate today. Sales traditionally used to be, phone calls, cold calling, then it went to email, and today there's messenger apps, there's texting, but social media, it's almost like a personal broadcast. It really shows who you are as a person, and I think in a premium sale, a B2B sale, the buyer wants to trust you, and social media allows you to gain trust without really knowing somebody personally. Which leads to my successful stories. I actually had somebody who's a new customer of ours today in our new arena reached out to me on LinkedIn. He found me and just said, "You look like somebody I should know." And that was the extent of his no. And the relationship started there. And we've actually become really close friends. And we had a lot in common. He went to college in a place I almost went to college, in the same degree that I got, and it was just those relationships when they're organic like that, and they happen in that way, and you didn't really force it in sales. It's the most rewarding thing, and that's social media allows you to do that.
Well, I think that makes the simplistic message of that story is really important too, because I think what a lot of reps miss is they overthink social selling and be like, how do I sell on this channel? How do I do that? To your point about the growth of sales from just the phone to where we are today, it's not about attacking it differently. It's about having a strong message in every one of those channels are. And almost more important to leave better messages on the phone because everyone's getting a dozen phone calls a day, and then everyone messages, and everyone's getting 200 emails a day, and everyone's absorbed in social media all the time. And so you really do need to be conscious of how do I just continue the dialogue between all those different mediums to make sure that I'm attracting people to me, right?
Well, it's like what you just said. You and I were just having this conversation before we started this. And frankly, like I'm in the middle of a sales process where I had two different executives communicating with me. One wants to communicate over email and introduce me to another one over email. And I learned very quickly that gentleman does not want to communicate over email at all. He didn't respond. He doesn't like to email. So I think that's something that you got to identify as a salesperson. Like, what's the medium you need to use in every situation?
And ultimately, especially on the premium side, it's just using all those platforms to be able to get that person to your facility, right? Because ultimately, no one's going to, or very rarely are they going to drop $500,000, $1 million, 200,000, even 50,000 without coming in and experience help. So playing to how that person will find value in the interaction with you, or medium that is, however it happens, to make sure that you're still going back to the old school face-to-face conversation, right?
Yeah, nothing beats face-to-face. And the reality is whatever engagement you start with, you want to get there. In any B2B sales process, if you're doing a lot more in the transactional sales process where somebody says, hey, I want season tickets, and you essentially just need to get them the information in the right way, it's a little different. Or if I want to buy a suite for a game, that's very different than what the premium or B2B process is. But again, I think even in those situations, if you can get face-to-face, it's always easier.
So one of the biggest challenges that young reps have is transitioning from, we just talked about, an account executive, way more transactional, to a premium seller who now all of a sudden, like, mean, there's some place where you sell 3 times a year, and that's a successful year for that role in that organization. So what are some of the skills in premium that are different than, when you were selling season tickets and partial plans and all that stuff, that if you could go back and tell young Paul, like, these are the things that we really need to focus on, because these are the differences between the two jobs?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the process of understanding that you're not necessarily selling fans anymore. I mean, season tickets sales and ticket sales becomes a lot of like, hey, they bought tickets to a game. I want to contact this person and see if we can up their spend. But then when you go to premium sales, a lot of people you have the opportunity to sell, or you should be selling, have never been to a game or don't care about the team. I have several people that I can talk to that I've sold products to about our team that don't know, they couldn't list every player on our team.
That's right.
Which is a unique thing. And I think just understanding the difference between selling to a business and selling to an individual or a fan, it's very different.
You have to understand, at the end of the day, the decision-making process of someone just buying season tickets is often emotional. A lot of times when it comes to premium seating, it's going to be very analytical, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a much better way to say it, I would say. And frankly, you're basically positioning them in a better way to help their business when you start focusing on premium and you're selling to someone that's not a fan. It still can be emotional. Don't get me wrong. If they've never been to a game before and you can pull them into that excitement and you have a good situation, it can be an emotional decision.
So I actually just wrote about this the other day, but I think one of the things to attack is, a lot of times, if it's just a black and white decision, if this is going to help the business grow, if a business is even considering a suite with an organization, then the answer to that is yes. Like, they'll make that money back, but oftentimes the biggest fear that they have isn't will they make the money back. It's, I get to the end of the year, I've got 60 tickets in the drawer. Those tickets cost $500 each. How am I going to look my boss in the face? And even though there may have been positive success stories here, he's also going to be staring at, or we're going to be staring at, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 worth of unused seats that will always enter the discussion. So how do you wrap the head of an executive around that fear that they'll always have about unused seats?
It's generally actually posing them with a question. So if your thought process is to justify value out of this buy, is that I need to bring a prospect that's going to generate revenue or give it to somebody that's generating revenue. Like, nobody generates revenue better for you than your people, right? And if you look in your office and you see a bunch of people that have not been able to use these tickets or attend the game, and you look at them and say, hey, would you like to go to this show tonight or to this game tonight? I can't imagine that doesn't give you automatic value, whether they say yes or no.
Yep.
Because you're showing them that you value them. And I think there's immense value in that. And I think that's a lost art. And you think about new businesses today where they feed you lunch, they bring kitchens, you have your own coffee bar in your office. Like, that's money spent on your staff. That's no different than what this would be if you used it in that way. I think it's just changing your thinking a little bit and knowing that you don't have to use this for only one thing.
So you mentioned, using it as a gift or an incentive, like if you have the unused seats, as opposed to an email, because there's no value that comes associated with, we just have tickets available, let's send them out. And I think what a lot of times reps can lose in the sales process, if you're the one that's telling that to the company, you become more valuable because you are giving them away to utilize tickets. And if push comes to shove and it's the Warriors versus the Giants, if they believe that you're the expert who's helping them understand how to utilize tickets, they're going to choose you every day of the week and twice on Sunday, right?
Yeah, it's true. Well, you become experts in this when you do it for a while, and you see what works and what doesn't work, and how you've been able to make other companies or people successful. It's really an interesting part of the process. And I think the value that we provide is for companies that haven't done it very much, is being able to share those success stories and even introducing them to those people that have had real good success using it. And we want to do that. I mean, the teams want to do those things. We want to see value provided out of these things. And I think the strength in hiring people, like, unemployment rate is so low today.
Yeah.
It's hard to find good people. So I think it's important for these companies to think about, how am I going to keep them here? I'm not saying we're the only answer, But sports is a great answer for that because you're providing excitement, value, and joy to those people's lives.
But I think so all the different things you're talking about are such a good conversation because when someone's buying season tickets, or even when someone's buying, think about it very linearly, right? They tend to think we're buying this for business development, so we're going to use it on our clients, and that's an opportunity for you, right? Because even if they're considering it for that, then you can start to open their mind to all the different other ways that they'd be able to utilize it and gain value out of it that they're not thinking of. I think sometimes we give business people too much credit in terms of how they think about it. They're just thinking about it in terms of, I know I've taken clients to a game. I know that's been successful. Now I'm in a leadership role. Now I want to do that. Yeah. And they don't think of all those other things. I think sometimes they give them too much credit in the sales process, right? That we can still be the expert and teach them new things because that's our responsibility, right?
Yeah. There's a fine line in that conversation because there's a line where the person prospectively buying sees you as an expert or just sees you as a salesperson.
That's right.
And that's partially back to what we were talking about at the beginning. This, for the relationship comes in the authenticity, the people understanding that they can trust you rather than just that you're trying to sell something to somebody. I think that's a little bit of being honest with them. Like, look, I realize this is my job. I know you know this is my job to sell this to you, but the reality is I'm very adamant that this is the right decision for you. And if you really believe that and you say it, then I think that's the right thing to do, and I think that's the right way for it to come across.
And I think we can talk about this because we have some perspective and experience on it now, but one of the most difficult sales for a young rep is always going to be their first premium seat sale because they can wrap their mind around a partial plan. They can wrap their mind and start to see other people are selling season tickets on a more daily basis. How does a young salesperson wrap their head around something that they may never be able to afford to buy on their own terms or may never be in a position to buy in their own capacity?
That's a good question. I'm going to change what you're asking a little bit because I think the number one mistake that younger sales reps say whenever I've talked to them about a premium sale or I brought them along with me, they always say, what are you going to try and pitch them?
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, hold on. We're not pitching anything right now.
Such a point.
We're having a conversation. We're going to find out what they want to do. What do they like? What are they interested in? We don't necessarily have what they like. Then you can talk about what we have and how that might solve their problem, or maybe it won't. But I think that's the end of the day is every meeting, every conversation, it's not what do I want to pitch you. Sure, you know what you have to sell. But maybe you don't have anything to pitch that person. Maybe you don't have anything that they will buy. So don't hurt yourself.
So I think it's a really good point because you hear that all the time, right? Like, oh, I think I'm going to pitch these guys for club seats or even like group sales. Like, oh, this is what I'm going to sell these people. And the people who are going to tell you what they need the best are that. And so instead of, again, a lot of times overthinking it, like as opposed to thinking about what can I sell to them, we need to do a better job of teaching and learning young salespeople to look at our stadium as a way to create solutions for people. And then once they think about those areas as a way to create solutions for people, as opposed to them being seats and seat locations, when they're solutions, it makes it a lot easier for a rep to tie what they're hearing to that.
You completely agree. I mean, the process of the sale and listening to the customer, it's a paramount piece of this. You may get excited that you get to sell something more shiny, more expensive than maybe you used to be signing, but there's definitely somewhat of an art to this.
Yeah.
But I think the other part of it too is it's just numbers. There's nothing to worry about outside of the fact that it's just a number, and somebody can buy it, somebody can afford it, somebody can't, somebody can. I mean, it can go either way. But at the end of the day, you have to be realistic with yourself and what these conversations are. And you need to get within yourself to understand the process. It can't just be something where you're out like, I got to sell this, I got to sell this, because you're having genuine conversations with people. Just be, I hate to make it so simple, but be human. Be a human being. Like, be in the middle of that situation, just like you would be talking to your brother or your sister.
And I think that's important. And a lot of times, a lot of reps won't put themselves out there because they don't like rejection anyway. And so to get rejected over a suite, it's just like, oh my gosh, like that's going to be the worst thing. I'm going to develop this relationship with this person, even if I invest and I do everything right, they may still say no. And one of the things I say is like, it shouldn't hurt, but it's going to sting a lot. Like, even at this point in your career, right? Like, you get that no when you've invested yourself in the process, and that person, it stings, right? Like, I don't, you hear reps being like, I want to get to that point where when I hear a no, I'm not worried about the no or it doesn't hurt or blah, blah, blah. And I think when you talk about when you invest in the other person that way and you believe that this is really going to help their business, it should still sting, right? And you shouldn't be afraid of that.
Yeah, I actually would tell you the interesting thing is you get in this longer, and I've been in this 12 seasons in basketball and another 3 in golf. You have to reevaluate yourself a little bit because even later in life, I get rejections on deals that I was like, that's happening.
Yeah.
That's closing. And then your ego starts to get in the way a little bit. Then you start getting angry. And you really need to check yourself, especially when you've been doing it for a while. You got to avoid those situations. You can't come into this with an ego. You can't come into this with an attitude of, I know everything. You always have to be learning. There are going to be a lot of moments that sting. There are going to be a lot of hard times. And look, I realize I'm speaking coming from the Golden State Warriors, and people hear me say that, probably chuckle a little bit.
But
yeah, but I mean, I've been with our team when we're really bad. I've been with us when we're really good. And there's always going to be good and hard times. And you got to stay even keel. You just got to keep a level head throughout the whole thing.
it's awesome. And so you're one of the more grounded people humble people I've talked to in this industry. How have you been able to maintain such a positive work-life balance with having a long career in the selling side of this and really being on the ground with the footsteps and having to do that transition from good team to bad team, different jobs? How?
Yeah, the work-life balance, again, as you get more into this, you get married, you have kids. I have 2 kids. I've been married almost 10 years. That becomes the bigger challenge. That becomes a bigger challenge than the job. And you still want to be really successful. You and I were talking earlier about, working effective from 9 to 5, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Be as effective as I can in those hours. And then when I'm home, making sure I'm home, like I'm present with my family. And we have the ability to work when we're at home at any moment with our phones, with our email, with text messages. I could go prospecting at 10 p.m. at night and figure out leads I want to pack right in the morning. But I need to make sure for my boys and my wife that I am present when I'm home. Put your phone down for a couple hours at least. Eat dinner at the table. Those are important things, and it's different for everybody. But you got to know what works for you, and it's going to be a challenge. Like you hear people say you can't have everything, and to a certain extent, that's true. But you can be the best that you can to try to have everything.
I think that's a good point. I think it's easy to say as you get older, and it's harder to do when you're younger, when you have all those pressures on you, but you still need to be able to find a way to get some space in those situations because the job can be overwhelming. And a lot of that time you see reps analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
And I think some of the way to get around analysis paralysis is just being able to take a step away when you're not there.
Getting a little more personal on this note too. You mentioned LinkedIn. I just recently did a post about it, and Kevin Love and Tyronn Lue in the middle of the basketball season. Absolutely admire both of them for this. Kevin Love had an anxiety attack while he was playing in a game, and later his teammates questioned that he was really injured, and he came out and publicly and told people what happened. That he had anxiety, and it allowed his coach to admit to himself that he had it, and he took time away because he knew he needed it. And they really showed us a moment where it's important to know when you're self-aware what you need to be doing for yourself. Your job's important, yes, but if you're not around, the job obviously doesn't matter. And I think just being able to have that balance. And I wrote a post on LinkedIn about this and about them. I've had anxiety. My wife has too. It happens when you get yourself into a lot of different things, and you work really hard at life, and you try a lot of things. So I think everybody's got to find that balance. And I appreciate your comment about being humble. I definitely have moments where I feel like I'm not.
I don't buy that.
I appreciate it. But that post to me just the end of the season when we won and we beat them. That's what I thought about of them.
Yeah.
Which is why I wrote what I wrote about Tyrone Lue and Kevin Love. Just I was impressed by them being able to come out and say that and end the year they did to be as successful as they were.
So, and I think, I had panic attacks too. There was a series of few years that I've talked about it on some of the podcasts and written about it a little bit, but I haven't been someone that's thrown it onto social media or anything like that. And I think, one of the challenges when you've had it and you can start to see now other people who are pushing themselves towards things like that, you want to make sure that you can take a step back and a step away and be like, guys, like you need, like, trust me, you don't want to go through what I have.
Yeah. Legitimately, you get really bad. You could feel like you're having a heart attack.
Yeah.
I had it in college, and I was super young then. So it's tough to have it start that young, but then, like, you can realize how to not let it come back.
Yep.
I've never had it that bad again since that. But it's an important thing. It's an important thing for everybody. And I think, the other thing Kevin Love said, everybody's going through something.
Yep.
So, people in your workplace showing empathy, but managing with compassion.
Yeah.
I think that's a little sound out here. Managing with compassion is a very important thing. Jeff Weiner, CEO of LinkedIn, always talks about that. I also admire his management style, his philosophy. A lot of people at that company, they preach this to their staff. And I think that's an important thing for all people in sports, too. It's easy for us to work 70, 80 hours a week and drive ourselves into the ground.
So what drives you? So at the end of the day, why are you still hitting the road? Why are you still – you could go anywhere right now. You could do just about anything in sports. What keeps you?
I love living where I live, and I started working in basketball because I love basketball. I initially wanted to be a sports announcer, and then I liked sales better.
Yeah.
There's a lot more interesting conversations. I've learned a lot more in sales conversations than I would interviewing an athlete.
Yeah.
Although both are fun. I like the learning aspect of it. But I think my initial purpose of, like, I want to be around basketball has changed to now I want to be a great example for my kids.
Yep.
I want to be around for my family, and my family wants to live where we live, near our family. I love living where we live. So I love the organization I work for. I think I got a little more picky about who I work for.
Yep.
The longer I've done this, I think you start to find out how important that is.
Yeah.
And relationships in this business are really important. I love what I do. We're building a new building, and I think I'm in one of the best situations. And I'm going to enjoy it as long as it lasts, because I know in this business it doesn't last forever. And I think for now, I'm happy.
That's awesome. Listen, I think there's such a pressure sometimes on you. I know we got to wrap up. I got to run, but I know there's sometimes a lot of pressure on young reps to move into that, like, just strictly managing side, because I think that's it. But there's if you want to keep having those level of conversations with people, and I mean, we all know there's nothing more thrilling than sitting down with a senior executive and having a conversation and a dialogue where we talk about our product and what we have to offer them. And I think sometimes reps believe they can't find a career out of that in sports. And it's always fun to see, people like you who have made a concerted effort to continue to do those things and chase those things and prove that you can keep putting your feet on the ground. That's something you really love in sports.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I do love to sell. And as you said, I've had my chances to manage people. But I think, I've learned that what I do right now is what's best for the organization I work for. When the right thing comes, and then you can make that decision then. But yeah, I appreciate the kind words, and it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, well, appreciate it, Paul.